I chat today a little bit about the AstrHori specialty probe lens that for people are using in toy photography, and I want to speak to you on my thoughts about it, about the lens itself, and then some things to consider when using particularly a Canon mirrorless like a EOS R6 or EOS R body. Something to consider that might be a bit different than using your standard DSLR, EF mount body or whatever. That being said, I've already had the lens out and taken a few photos with it. So I'm gonna just briefly open it up and show you what's in here. I think it comes packed pretty nice. These come in plastic when you buy it and first open it. I'm not quite sure why they give you two lens bags. I really don't know why. One is, well, I do know why. One is for the long part and one is for the short part, I guess, if you're going to travel with it outside of the hard case. I'm not sure, though, honestly, why I get two sets of lens caps for the front and the rear. I haven't figured that out, but we've come to the to the realization that I do know now why they give you two lens bags. They're pretty nice. I mean, the case is fine. I don't really care about the case so much. When taking this out, it feels pretty solid. I mean, it's metal. It's a, there goes the lens cap. It's a solid piece. I mean, it doesn't feel cheap. And it's got a front lens cap and a rear lens cap. I'll just kind of move this stuff out of the way. I want to take this light cord out of here also. So it's really simple. You take this off, you take the front lens cap off. Your lens is there with your LED ring light element. Here's the rear part. So it's a, male and a female style connection. It slides in there, then you can turn it says lock, and it's got a directional arrow, so you can lock this in so that it stays in place, and there's no wobble. It's all machined really well. Sometimes you get these lenses that are not a knockoff, but a less expensive version of an original, and sometimes the machining and stuff can be a little bit off, a little bit loose. This one is really solid and feels really good. One of the things I want to talk about before I put it on the camera is the aperture ring. If you're used to a standard lens that a manual lens that has an f-stop ring that clicks into position, then you're not going to have that on this. You're getting just a smooth dial. So and this is important because this is a fully manual lens. You're not going to be able to select f-stop in your camera body, regardless of what kind of camera body you have. It's all going to be controlled on this dial. And so it would be nice if I wasn't feeling like I was playing roulette and I just spin the wheel and I can go between apertures. I can go from F13 to F40, and I would like the ability to know that I'm at a certain aperture, especially when you're dealing with 13 is stopped down pretty good and 40 is just way stopped down. So I would like to be able to have this click into a position and not be able to go into intermediary spots also. That's a small thing, but it matters. That's important to be able to know that I'm at F16 and not like 13 and a half. Is there an F15? I don't even know. But anyway, it's a small thing, but it's important because this is a fully manual lens, and you want to be able to make sure that you're in the aperture that's selected. So that's one of my first little gripes about it. It's not a deal breaker. I mean, it's just something to be aware of. Another thing I want to talk about that is really important, because I ran into this when I mounted the lens, and then I went to take my first shot. So we know it's totally manual. There are no pins at all in this mount. No pins. There is no communication between this lens at all and your camera body. That being said, the reason that's important is because, and I don't think when I had my DSLRs, my 5Ds, that I had an option for this, but when you put this on the camera body, turn it, go to compose your shot, get everything lined up, and you go to click the shutter actuator, nothing happens. You're like, that's weird. Nothing happens. Why? And it dawned on me, it took me probably, 30 seconds, and I'm like, oh, okay. The camera is thinking there is no lens on the body, so it's not going to shoot. It's not going to open the curtain and allow that sensor to be exposed on the mirrorless body. So you need to go through your camera settings to the option that allows you to fire the shutter without a lens. Then it will work. So that being said, let's put this on the Canon body. So we've got the body here, RF mount, and this EOS R6. We're just going to go ahead and, like you would mount any lens, it's got the red dots on here. So you can line the red dots up on here and turn it till it clicks. So really good tight fit there. There's no play in the mount, which is nice. So there's no light leak. It's a real solid, sturdy mount. And it's not heavy, even though this is 18 inches, the bulk of the weight is back here at the mount. So, you don't have to worry about, like if, you had some regular, 100 millimeter lens on with extension tubes or something, and now you've got, 18 inches of lens, and it's all really heavy and putting stress on this mount. It's not. This is a real tight, real nice, real solid click when it locks in place, and that's nice to know. And so the next thing I want to kind of talk about is, you might see that I've got this mounted on a rail. Excuse my squeaky floor. I've got it mounted on a focus rail, and I'm going to see today the benefit of this, because yesterday, so one of the things that I got into yesterday was when I'm setting up my shot, the focus ring on this is nice and fluid and firm. It's not sloppy at all, but just the slightest turn at all, I mean, even a 32nd of a turn, and I was out of the focal range of the lens, meaning that, I went either past where it was sharpest or, back the other way, back below it where it was sharpest. And so it was hard for me to hit the spot that was the sharpest. And so a lot of things, people don't really know, unless you've shot macro before, that, any movement, any breath, any jiggle in the floor, any jiggle in the camera body, even actuating the shutter will create an unsharp image. And so one thing you might just want to, familiarize yourself real quick is that, a macro rail could be helpful for you. It's helpful for me because I have the ability to now set it up and then turn in the slightest, without touching the lens, turn from the back and adjust this into focus. And this is important because when you're shooting at the edge of the frame with this lens, where there is generally across the board in all, whether it's a brand name lens or an off-brand lens, there's always lack of contrast or distortion, lack of sharpness around the very edge. The sharpest part and the best part of the lenses are always the center. When you're buying a lens like this, expect there to be a lot of loss of contrast and quite a bit of loss of sharpness and distortion and things like that around the edge of the lens. So that being said, it makes it really tough to focus on anything that's framed up toward the edge of the lens. So it needs to be bright, and it needs to be able to have the ability to turn really tiny and make really tiny adjustments to the focus. And so the way this focuses is you can focus this on the front, but if you're not finding a good result with that, you can use a macro rail and you set your focus in the front. And then once you get it really close, then you can go to the back and you can either turn this forward or backward, and you're no longer moving the camera body you're no longer using the focal ring on the lens. You're using this rail, and so it eliminates a lot of the shake, and you can really fine-tune the focus. And that's another thing that was a bit of a chore yesterday, was setting up a shot and having the figures face in the top part of the frame. Focus was really hard to get. So another thing, the little light that goes on here, this USB-C type is what I think this is. It just plugs right into the side here, and this is kind of helpful. I wouldn't use it for the actual photography lighting, for toy photography, for what we do or what I do. And then this plugs into the USB, and then you've got a control here for on, off, and brightness values. This would probably help for lighting up the face to gain focus and then turning it back off. And so we'll check that out today too. All right, let's get this thing set up in a position. With your hand on the lens, it moves around so much that it's really hard to get stable focus. So let me zoom back in, and I'm going to take a shot at where I think it's sharp. I think it's probably sharp right about there. Okay. Now I'm going to be on 10-second timer, and I'm just going to take the shot and back away. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not worried about the normal things we would worry about in toy photography, clipping and highlights and all that stuff. We're just looking at focus in this lens. So first shot, let me give you my settings. F40, ISO 3200, 6-second exposure, and I manually focused on using the focus ring on the lens. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to focus using the dial on the macro rail here. And okay, back a little bit. Right about there. You back away. This is the same settings. I just did the focus using the macro rail, and I focused on the eyelid, and I'll be able to show you these images on the computer. That is image number 9637, and the previous image was 9636. So we'll see which one of those looks better, and I'll bring those up on the screen here in a minute. Let me now turn on the light to see if this helps me focus. Whew, that's a light cannon right on his face. That's pretty cool. Now you can turn it down. Let's see how well this helps me focusing. Oh yes, this is really nice for focusing. I'll tell you, because there is so much. Oh, this is great. Really great. Now my focus is in the exact same spot, but I'm going to use the macro rail once again to adjust the focus because there's going to be a difference. Now it's going to be even sharper because I have a lot of light on the front to help me see better to focus. So we're going to get a lot more sharpness out of this. Turn the light back off. Get out of the way. Okay, let's see what shot number that is. 9638. So, all right. So we did 3 shots, just to kind of recap, and then I'll bring them up on the screen. The first shot was just without the light on the front of the element, F40, 6-second exposure, ISO 3200, and manually focusing on the focus ring of the lens. We're going to see how sharp I got it with just my eye and everything bobbing around in there, because as you touch the lens, as you breathe on the lens at this macro level, everything is exaggerated, super, extreme. The next shot we did was same settings, 6-second exposure, F40, ISO 3200, and I used the macro rail to adjust what I thought was close without the light, adjust what I thought was close with my eye. Then on the third shot, exact same settings, ISO 3200, 6-second exposure, F40, but this time I turned the light on and then I focused with the macro rail, turned the light off, took the shot, and we'll see what the differences are in just those 3 shots doing those 3 things. And I'll bring those up on the screen right now. We'll open those, and I'm not going to adjust anything. I'm just going to open them. Okay, and we're going to focus on the eyes. So let me arrange. I think we can tile, let's tile it up horizontally. So, whoops, cancel, whoops. So this image here, okay, look, starting down here at the bottom, the right eye, manually focusing with just the focus ring bouncing around and no light. This is, you can see in this eyelid, it's pretty soft. This is where I was focusing, and it's pretty soft. So if you're worried about focus and getting this sharp, as you should, because you want the sharpest image you can get out of a lens, and especially in the edge of the frame. So next shot here, this is the one where I just used the macro rail. Definitely sharper, okay? Definitely. When you get your hands off that lens and off that camera body at such an extreme macro amount, you eliminate all that shaking and wobbling, and you can fine tune the focus using that rail to just roll focus slightly. Okay, now, so there is a difference between these two here for sure. You can definitely see this. Now let's take a look at the top one. Let's get this thing out of the way. Okay, let's take a look at, there's definitely a difference in this too, and I'm going to tell you. So look here underneath the eyelid, and right here, and right here. Definitely with the light on the face, and then using the macro rail, quite a bit of sharpness increase between the 3 images. So I would say, if this is a pretty decent lens to buy, if you can also get a macro rail. If you can't get a macro rail and you think you've got the finesse to ever so slightly turn that focus ring and get a sharp image, then by all means, you go do it. But for me, I know that the macro rail is an incredibly useful tool to be able to get the sharpest image out of that possibly. You could probably get a reasonably sharp image with just the light on at the end of the lens and focusing manually on the lens's focal ring. But at the end of the day, looking right here, this is handheld with no light and no macro rail, using the focal ring on the camera. I mean on the lens. It's quite a bit blurry. This one here is no light and using the macro rail. Definitely a big difference. More defined highlights, more defined texture under the eyelid. Much better. Then you've got the macro rail with the light on at the end of the lens, and there's a whole lot more detail in here. A whole lot more detail. So you make your call. There's the images. Hope this helps. And if you haven't done so, like and subscribe to the channel, man. I appreciate you guys. Take care.